There's so many different lessons learned, mistakes made in this. I'd get on these calls and I'd be like, these are all the things I'm excited about. These are all the things you can do and sell or pitch. As you can imagine, that was just not the right approach.
Well, money just brings out a whole other side of emotions. It's a sensitive topic. It's hard for some to talk about. So that's really where we come in.
There are two tracks you can take with AI. You either see it as this threat and you're the victim, or there's this completely other side of it. You embrace this technology as a tool.
To build a book of business is a trust mechanism. Who's this 29, 30-year-old that, what does he know?
So this is David Hobbs. I'm with Tyler Burns. I'm recording from Zurich, Switzerland. Tyler's in Conshohocken in the US. And we just wanted to get together and have a conversation about our careers, what we've done to get up to this point, what the future looks like. And Tyler, welcome. Hope you're doing well and happy to have you here.
Thanks, Dave. Great intro. So I think this will be a good conversation. Tyler Burns. I'm a certified financial planner, and I am probably 6 to 7 years in the industry here. I grew up in Wilmington, Delaware. I studied economics at the University of Delaware and wasn't actually too sure on what I wanted to do after getting an economics and business degree. What I like about financial advising is it blends the financial analytical skill set that you learn about and develop through your business classes and finance classes in school, and numbers, which I always enjoyed. And then the other half of it, and really the big part of it, is the interpersonal client experience, the client connection, just the day-to-day interactions that you have with clients and families and their children and their lives. I started with a firm in Philadelphia, and it was actually more what we call the back office, operational. It was an operational role and a portfolio management role where I learned how to build investment portfolios. And I thought that was a great sort of first job in the industry. I was able to build that skill set, which is totally different, but very important. Then I actually went to take a job in Greenville, South Carolina for a financial advisor, helping him develop financial plans, deliver client service, just help his existing book. And that's actually mostly what I'm doing with Mark as well. Mark has 30 years of experience in the industry, and I've been with him for about 3 or 4 years now. So that's where I am in my career now. I'm just continuously learning. Like I said, I'm a certified financial planner, and I received that designation about 3 years ago.
I think one reason we wanted to talk today is we see this inflection point really in both of our careers, but focusing on your journey. I think what I understand from your story is up till now, it's been more back office roles where you're in the numbers, in the weeds, figuring out strategies. And I think this next step that we've been talking about is how do you then leverage that experience into building new relationships and a personal brand. So you're CFP, Certified Financial Planner. And so I think from what I'm hearing is, yes, you have that economics background, but then you also layer that with building relationships and understanding clients' needs with regard to their finance. So I'm curious how you go about having those conversations. If someone comes to you interested in financial planning services, what does the process look like? Not necessarily what do you recommend, but how do you go about determining how to help them best?
It's very interesting because every situation is unique and particular to that specific client or their household or their family. So the first conversation is really getting to know them, getting to know their situation and at really what they're looking for. A lot of it ends up being that they're just they can't do all of their finances themselves, or maybe they think that they're doing something wrong or they're missing something, or they just have accounts and pieces all over the place and they just want to outsource that management to us or just get advice on particular topics or particular planning topics. So it really just starts with the basic sort of overall conversation, us getting to know them getting to know us. And then it's actually I would say that would be the sort of an introductory meeting. We explain our role, what we can help with in terms of their situation. What I'm really learning from Mark is how to ask the right questions to their clients. So it's super helpful sitting in the meetings with him, with a veteran senior advisor. It's almost second nature to him. So that's where I'm trying to get at. It is tough, and it is a skill that is needed. So I would say our first conversation, that's typically what it looks like.
It's interesting how important those interpersonal skills are, even in this business of, you think, finance, money.
Exactly. Money just brings out a whole other side of emotions and feelings. So it's a sensitive topic that some clients, it's hard for some to talk about. It just brings out a lot of emotions, can be a lot of issues. So that's really where we come in, act as a sounding board, provide value and advice as we can and where it's needed. So it's a skill set that you need to have. It almost is the profession. I would say it's number one.
Yeah. One thing I've been saying in different conversations that I really think, the future is going to belong to those who have this emotional intelligence as technology and tools improve, and maybe someone has the technology to do their own financial planning, but people still want to work with people in the end. And I think the more we can emphasize the importance of these people skills, just the better off I think you can be in your career. So I'm happy to hear. I'm happy to hear that. How do you work on these skills? What are the soft skills that you see as critical in financial planning? And do you have any advice or recommendations on how you can develop these skills better if you're interested in this field?
This is what I'm really focused on and working on for myself right now. I would say the first step is to get a mentor, like a senior advisor. So like Mark is for me and other advisors are here for me, where I can sit in on meetings and listen to his interactions and how that he interacts with clients. And then the next phase is actually slowly obtaining more of a speaker role, a communicating role through the meetings, and really getting to know the clients a little bit more. To build a book of business is a trust mechanism. So it's as a 29-year-old, 30-year-old financial advisor, it's tough to obtain some of that trust with older clients. Who's this 29, 30-year-old? What does he know? So definitely have to know your stuff. That background is necessary to be able to speak on some of these complex issues. So I would say that's number one, is to have that background knowledge and experience. And then, the second step there is to listen, have a mentor, listen, but try to be actively engaged where you can. So I'm working on that now. Maybe these podcasts, these talks that we're having could help me with that, right?
Yeah.
And I think just doing it, just getting out there, repetition is key. Establishing that trust is hard at first.
I think that's something I struggle with, or something I think about a lot, is how do you signal that credibility? And that is such a relatable skill across, I think, any business. And
yep, absolutely.
You probably know I do a lot of work with AI and technology, and a lot of my background is in technology. Curious how you are seeing, or in what ways technology plays a role in your career as a financial planner. Are you seeing AI, crypto, other kind of emerging technologies? Do you see that changing the way your role works?
I'm actively using it day to day. I use different AI tools as a research assistant, or maybe like an investment or a tax assistant, because there's just so much out there and there's so much that you need to know. And what I find it for is getting quick answers on some broad-based questions and situations, but I don't rely on it necessarily for a particular client situation. It's more of a research assistant. It's super helpful in that sense, but there are a lot of tools that firms are selling to advisors in our space. So for internally, I think it's super helpful. Externally, I think that relationship and those soft skills and that emotional intelligence and that trust mechanism between advisor and client will always be there. I think that's maybe what sets us apart a little bit from some of the AI and the tech stuff that's coming out.
Yeah, well, super interesting, and I'm really happy to be able to have learned a little bit more about what your profession's all about, what you're doing, how you're thinking about it, and I'm happy to talk more about what I'm up to.
All right, I'll flip the conversation back to you now. We'll talk about your career, how you've even gotten into this field or got interested in it. But Dave, do you want to give the listeners some just your background?
So I'm recording from Zurich. I moved here to Switzerland from Delaware beginning of 2024, and I did my MBA in Lausanne, Switzerland. And then since then, for the past year, almost a year and a half now, I've been building my own company, helping K through 12 schools understand, navigate, leverage AI in a responsible way that improves learning outcomes, helps make teachers' lives easier, and really just unpack all of the nuances of what AI means with regard to education, and really not just education, but kids and careers and college, and just what does it mean to raise good kids and with this kind of looming AI question. When is it good for a kid to use AI, and when is it short-circuiting this learning experience? My original background was in corporate. I worked for BlackRock doing software development, and I'm trying to navigate this new sort of entrepreneurial career where I have this Voyager company that I'm building, and it comes with just completely different challenges where when you're in a corporate situation, it's super structured. You show up to work every day. You know what you're going to be doing. If you do what you're told, you'll be pretty successful. And then you move into this new space where hundreds of options on where you could go or what you could do or how you could focus your time today. And it's sometimes it's really exciting. You have a great day, you make a sale, it's awesome. And then some days you just feel a little bit paralyzed by choices. And that's what I'm navigating myself. And then it's also what I'm so kind of passionate about, helping the next generation navigate these challenges, because I think it's going to be so important as you hear these stories of entry-level jobs going away because of AI and AI taking over jobs. I think there's a real push, or I think we need a real push in inspiring and helping, people coming out of college to have the agency to build their own careers, no matter what that looks like. So all that to say, I'm keeping busy over here.
Yeah, sounds like it. So what could you just tell us what sparked this? What sparked your idea for Voyager, or your passion?
Yeah. I think there's a few things. I think there's this alternate timeline where I was a teacher. Coming out of university, I taught at Tower Hill. My older sister is a 5th and 6th grade science teacher. My younger sister also works in a school, and sort of I have this connection to education that it's always been really important to me and my family. And so I think in an alternate timeline, maybe I was a teacher. And I think the MBA experience was super important in the way that it was 2024. So it was right after ChatGPT had launched, and it was a really interesting time because teachers were really navigating this for the first time. And basically I saw the good and the bad and the ugly through this MBA of how AI can affect education. Coming out of that, I was having conversations with my sisters, other friends who are teachers, and they were seeing the same problem. And I thought, what a cool opportunity to start a business in this space and try to help solve these problems, where it's how do you move the needle in the right direction and make sure you're not doing more harm than good. And I think it's a combination of research and trying to understand the learning process and ways that you can use AI to have the engagement and have the learning outcomes you want. But also it's such a balancing act, because if you over streamline everything with AI, then obviously you don't have that friction that's so important to learning. So it just was a combination of interest, a really fascinating problem, and I also just an opportunity that I thought, here's a problem that I think I can help solve.
Oh, it's great. Yeah. And definitely, as you explained it, you can see how needed it is and how interesting of a business that you have. What sparked your interest in AI initially?
Yeah.
Were you always interested in something like artificial intelligence, or how did you get into that?
I actually built the first Teams chatbot at BlackRock, my second, third year of being there. So there's of this, so it was my second year at BlackRock, and I'm doing a lot of platform engineering, DevOps kind of roles. And we had this idea for a chatbot that could help connect different systems and interact with it through natural language. And this was two years before ChatGPT. And it's so funny to look back on because it was so different. Without going into too much detail, you would basically sit there and write 100 different ways people could ask the phrase, show me information on this server. And you would write this phrase in 100 different ways. And then when someone else went to it, and asked a phrase that looked like these 100 phrases that I would manually type, it would know that it's looking for a server, and it would be able to pick out the entity of the server name. And it's so, to me, it's just crazy. That was 2 years before ChatGPT, and we have this bot running, and it's fine. It's useful, but it's pretty limited. And then ChatGPT launches, and like you go back and trying to use this bot, and it feels so like, it feels like it's 100 years old. So all that to say, I somehow was building chatbots before ChatGPT, and then it came out and it sort of just made mine look like a 2-year-old compared to this PhD student. But yeah, and
that's super interesting. That's great technical background that you could speak on.
Yeah, and I think and then when ChatGPT came out, it was just like, wow, like this is clearly pretty crazy technology.
How was your time spent, or how much time did you spend getting to understand ChatGPT or getting to know ChatGPT and how it worked?
Ooh, I remember when those image generators first came out, and like you could just make an image of anything with text, and I was like, this is unbelievable. Mm-hmm. And then I think like the next big leap was the reasoning models that came out in 2024, where it was able to start basically executing code. Like it would solve math problems by writing Python scripts, and then it'd be able to build Excel spreadsheets. And I feel like that was another jump where I was like, oh my God, this thing is really, really good. And then I think now it's the agents, where I have built some of these agentic workflows where it's, it's Claude looking at my Notion board, looking at my email, updating my Notion board, recommending emails to send, and then it's looking at my YouTube and understanding what content is doing well and views, and then giving me recommendations on what I should film that day. And that's the era we're in now. And then it's just, to me, I think there's a lot of places it might go. And I think my end conclusion on a lot of this is we really need to reevaluate what skills we emphasize, especially young people coming out of university. I think the biggest thing is going to be this idea of agency, where there's sort of two tracks you can take with AI, where you either see it as this threat and you're the victim and there are no jobs and we need to ban AI, or we need to subsidize employment. Or there's this completely other side of it where you embrace this technology as a tool that can help you build something meaningful, can build something that can help other people, can make you money. And I think the future is going to belong to those people that are willing to build. And that's the mindset that I like to interweave into all of my thinking on this. And I think there is some opportunity to help ease this transition. And we shouldn't just fire everybody and hire AIs. But at the same time, we also need to recognize that there is a real opportunity, if you're willing to build with these tools, to create interesting things.
What's your day-to-day for the business? What's your day-to-day look like? How are you getting yourself out there? How are you branding Voyager? How are you scheduling these workshops or getting yourself out there in front of these schools, parents, teachers?
Maybe you can tell, like, the technology and the education side is where the bulk of my energy and passion is. But from a business perspective, I feel like you have to spend 70 or 80% of your time on actually building the business. I am working on having a more systematic approach on how am I structuring this business, this outreach schedule, sales, the brand. Maybe not surprising, AI does play a large role for sales outreach. I think We start with how do I engage with schools and keep track of everything. AI is really helpful. So I have a Notion board, which is basically this online tool that for me, it's a customer relationship manager mostly, where I just have all of the schools that I've engaged with, potential clients, and then I keep a record of my conversations that I've had, record, I did a workshop here, here's what went well, here's the feedback I got. I think for me, keeping myself organized is one of the bigger challenges because I always want to be going in 100 different directions and I'll forget something or I never followed up with this person. So having that source of truth was a big step. And then even just as big a step was then having AI, connecting that to Claude. And I use Claude to look at my Notion board, help me draft the 10 emails I need to send today. And all of that has been really helpful in the sales process. And then obviously there's the technology. And then just as importantly is the human steps, the personal conversations, the calls, and how to bridge that gap from a first conversation to running the workshop and getting paid. There's so many different lessons learned, mistakes made in this, but I think early on I'd get on these calls with a head of school or a teacher and I'd be like, these are all the things I'm excited about. These are all the things you can do. This is what I want to do, this, and sell or pitch, or I would be doing all the talking. And I think, as you can imagine, that was just not the right approach. You start to do a little bit of research on how to sell. And one of the first things that people will point to is, well, basically listening is more important than selling in sales. And I started having conversations where I would lead with, so how are you guys thinking about AI today? What problems are you seeing? Where are the biggest gaps? And starting, for me, that was like the first mental shift that made a huge difference in these calls was, it's not me saying everything I want to do, but it's the client or potential customer telling you what their problems are and then you listening. And I think that's probably universally pretty good advice for anyone who has to sell or do sales. But I think I learned that the hard way. And on the brand, I think probably the hardest thing that I have to do, and probably a hard thing that you'll have to do or you're finding is how do you signal trust? How can you approach a client, a potential customer, and have them trust that what you're doing is good for them, that you have the expertise, that you have the passion and the ability to pull this off, to make good on your promises. And I think what it comes down to is this idea of your personal brand. And taking some of these ideas from different entrepreneurs, YouTubers, but I think at the core is you need to have evidence of what you're building. You need people to know who you are, and you need to basically this idea of building in public where you're willing to showcase some of your ideas, whether it's in blog articles or social media posts or some sort of video medium or podcast. But you need to create this avenue. I've found that this idea of building in public has been really helpful to signaling credibility and helping people understand what I'm building and then trying to build that trust.
We're kind of at the same stage here. Building a brand and trust and establishing credibility, like you said, is everything. So
yeah, and it's
that's what I'm working on.
Yeah, it's hard to do at first.
If I view LinkedIn, maybe I'm not getting super high engagement, but I'm staying top of mind. This is what Tyler does, and maybe eventually I'll need him.
Yeah, that's so important, and it just is. I think if you can just give little nuggets of useful information out to people, start to associate you with this useful information, and again, it all comes down to building that personal brand.
Yeah, maybe next call we could drill in a little bit deeper. But I think this was a good first call. Good talk, good conversation.